Stan Gibilisco here, with a little bit of additional explanation of one of the figures that you'll find in my book, Teach Yourself Electricity and Electronics, 6th edition, published in June of 2016 by McGraw-Hill and co-authored with Simon Monk, who provided new chapters for this edition on microcontrollers and the Arduino device. You do not want to miss that. But the subject of this particular video is found in figure 35-5 on page 649. It has to do with grounding of electronic equipment, be it consumer electronic equipment such as high fidelity stereos or communications equipment such as shortwave radios and amateur radios. Anything that has to do with radio frequency energy or is susceptible to interference from radio frequency energy. And that interference is becoming an increasing problem in today's world of abundant electronic gadgetry. At A in figure 35-5 is an illustration of the proper method of grounding multiple pieces of electronic equipment. And at B is shown an example of a bad way to do it. Now the trick here is that these extra connections, these are all the chassis of the radio, and these are grounded wires connecting the chassis together. All of the wires are grounded wires that connect various components together. A lot of times you'll think you've produced an ideal system like this, where you connect each individual component's ground terminal to a single common component, sometimes even a metal rod running the back of the length of your workbench, called a ground bus. You may think you've done this when in fact you've done that, because the equipment may be connected by pieces of coaxial cable, and the shielding on those coaxial cables can interconnect the grounds of the various pieces of equipment, and you might end up getting ground loops, as they're called, like this, when you think you've got a configuration that's free of ground loops, like that. So what you want to do, if you do have interconnections like this in any form between multiple pieces of equipment, you want to make sure that you treat such pieces of equipment for grounding purposes as a single piece of equipment. So here, for example, you could get rid of the ground loops by eliminating the individual grounds here and just having one ground at either end or at any one of the components, just so long as you never get a ground loop. And I think that's a pretty self-explanatory term. If you can follow a grounded wire around and around and around in a loop-like configuration, and these different grounds, they look like they're different earth connections. They might be, or they might be connected to a common ground such as a water pipe, anything like that. These loops can act like little antennas, and if your equipment radiates radio frequency energy, these little loops can radiate that energy and interfere with all kinds of devices, consumer electronic equipment in particular. And if it's a piece of consumer electronic equipment, such as a high fidelity stereo system, and you have loops like this, they can pick up radio frequency energy from such sources as ham radios, police radios, fire department radios, and even, believe it or not, certain types of light bulbs and consumer appliances such as microwave ovens. And as the preponderance of microcontrollers in consumer equipment increases, even your refrigerator might interfere with your stereo high fidelity system if you have ground loops. You want to avoid these. And in addition, the avoidance of ground loops can reduce the susceptibility of your equipment to interference from the quote-unquote static caused by thunder showers, although in my opinion the best thing to do during a heavy thunderstorm is to unplug all of your equipment like those little old ladies used to do, and isolate your equipment from the electrical system and from everything until the storm passes. Have you ever had a piece of electronic equipment get fried? I mean, literally cooked by a lightning strike? I have. And believe me, cooked electronic devices don't taste anywhere near as good as this. Even with presuming you don't cook the devices along with the pizza, okay? You put them on after you're done cooking the pizza. You can tell I'm Italian, can't you? Stan Gibilisco, signing off. Until next time, so long.